Hey, welcome back to the channel, everyone. So with the new server types and Cradle Memetics, the meta has switched up a bit. In this video, I'm going to be covering the best Jaws build for the Void and Balance server types. With Season 2, Once Human introduced two new game difficulties, Hard and Normal, as well as two variations of Anomalies and Wish Machines. This build will focus on the server type of Void and Balance with the Wish Machine that includes both the Jaws in Phase 1 and the Shaman Vulture top in Phase 2. This build will work on the Phase Coherence Anomaly server as well, but you'll have to do some modifications to the Cradle, and the path to obtain the gun and key items are going to be different since you'll need to buy those instead of gamble. And I'll briefly touch on those changes when we get into the specifics. There's also one setting in the game that you're going to want to change that really takes this build to the next level, and for the new players, I'll even tell you how you can get a 2-star Jaws blueprint for free. I'll show you where to find that setting and how to claim your free blueprint at the end of the video. Since this build will focus on the Void Balance Super Anomaly servers, let's briefly discuss what those are. These are mobs that will have a shield that makes them immune to all damage unless you have the correct countermeasure. Once you down that shield, the mob will then be able to take damage from any damage type. The Super Anomaly Void countermeasure are Unstable Bomber, which we will use as our primary damage source, or Power Surge. If you're not using a weapon that deals that type of damage, then there's also Cradle Overrides for the shotgun and rifles that you can use to counter that. The Super Anomaly Balance countermeasures are going to be Burn Damage and Frost Vortex. Neither of those we're going to be using in this build. However, the Cradle Overrides are going to be Sniper and Pistols, and I'll go more into the build Cradle Overrides at the end of the video, but essentially we're going to be taking the Pistol Override, which is going to allow us to do damage to everything on the server without needing to do anything special or swap weapons. So on to the build. For the main weapon, we're going to be using the Jaws pistol. Now this can be obtained from the Wish Machine by purchasing it directly for 8,000 Star Crom, or if you're on one of the Void Balance servers, you'll also be able to gamble for it in Phase 1 on the Wish Machine. Now it's always recommended to gamble when the guaranteed item is the main item that you're looking to get. So essentially, instead of paying 8K, you'll be able to gamble 10K and rack up a bunch of other patterns and fragments, and you're pretty much guaranteed to walk away with at least a 2-star Jaws for essentially only 2,000 more Star Crom because of the guarantees. For the calibration on this weapon, you're going to want to find the rapid shot with crit rate. So the way this build works is the Jaws triggers Unstable Bomber every 4th hit, and Unstable Bomber does massive status damage, which has the ability to crit. Each time you crit, the hit count is doubled, so if you get 2 crits in a row, it'll count as 4 and trigger the bonus Unstable Bomber damage. This means that we're going to want to get a high amount of crit rate, crit damage, status damage, and weapon damage to make sure that we're popping off the Unstable Bomber as hard as we can and as often as we can. The mod type that we're going to use is the Bombardier Souvenir, and we're always looking for the violence suffix, which is going to add crit damage, but we also want to prioritize crit rate, status damage, and weapon damage. Now this mod can come from weapon crates, or you can get it off the Shadowhound and the Tree Ant bosses. For the key item, we're going to be using the Shaman Vulture top. This will be available in Phase 2 from the Wish Machine, and again, it's recommended that you gamble since you're guaranteed to get a 2-star, as well as a bunch of other great legendary gear that you can use for future builds. Now, this adds 35% crit after Unstable Bomber's triggered, and remember, we're going to want to crit as much as possible because it's going to cause us to proc more damage quicker. For the mod type, we're going to be using Rejuvenating, which will keep our health topped up every time we kill mobs, and this can be attained from the Silo Theta. Next, we're going to want to do 4 pieces of the Lonewolf set, and then 1 piece of the Bastille. So I use Bastille in most of my builds, and I already have the boots crafted, so I'm going to use those. But you can choose whichever open slot you have. So for instance, my buddy has the pants already crafted, so he would use the pants instead of the boots. So whichever one you have, if you already have one crafted. Now the Lonewolf set is going to give us magazine capacity. It's going to give us crit rate. It's going to give us additional crit damage, and then for the fourth one, it's going to give us more crit rate and more damage. The Bastille is going to give us an additional 10% weapon damage when we're over 70% health, which should be often due to the rejuvenating mod that we keep on our chest. Next, we'll go over all the different mods for the items. For the Helm, we're going to use Momentum Up, which is going to increase the fire rate for the first half of the mag, and then the damage by 30% for the second half of the mag. And this can be obtained from the Silo Alpha. For the mask, we're going to use Point Detonation, which is going to increase the unstable bomber damage by 25% if it hits one enemy. Now, unstable bomber does have splash AoE damage, so this build destroys groups of mobs. But this mod will take your damage to the next level in PvP, or if you're fighting bosses. And you can obtain this mod from the Silo EX1. For the pants, we're going to use Deadshot. This is going to trigger a 5% increase crit damage every time we crit, and it's going to stack up to 45% for the duration of the magazine, and this can be obtained from the Silo Psi. For the gloves, we're going to use Crit Amplifier. This adds 10% crit rate and 15% crit damage, and it can be obtained from the Silo Sigma. For the shoes, we're going to either use Covered Advance, which is going to grant us 20% weapon and status damage for 30 seconds if we haven't taken any damage in the past 4 seconds, or you can use Slow and Steady, which offers a similar 10% damage and another 10% when you're above 90% health. Both of these mods can be attained from the Silo Phi. For your secondary weapon, I'd recommend the recurved crossbow, which you can open the fight with to hit a bullseye, which is then going to mark the target and give you an additional 15% crit rate for the next 10 seconds. And if you don't have any of the mods listed, just look for something with good secondary stats. Remember, our priority for this build is going to be crit rate, then crit damage, then status damage, then weapon damage. Other nice to haves are HP, especially in PvP, and also magazine capacity. Moving on to the Cradle, we're going to want Handgun Enhancement, Deviation Master if we're doing PvE, the Anti-Regen Pistol, which is going to be our counter for the Balance Super Anomaly, Tactical Combo, which is going to increase our damage by 25% when we're swapping weapons. So if we use the crossbow first and then we switch over to this will increase the damage by 25%. Status Enhancement. First round blast is optional. You can do something more defensive on a PvE server, but essentially this is going to give us anytime we reload, and we won't be reloading a lot, but when we do, it'll give us an instant damage for our unstable bomber by 25% for the next 4 seconds. And then series detonation. And then finally, the last slot is going to be open. I personally use Lone Walker, which increases my damage while I'm solo, but if you're doing group play, you can swap it to whatever else you like. Same with the Deviation Master on the PvP. Since it only increases damage to bosses and elites, you can use something else more defensive. Now, this build will do a ton of damage, but there is one setting I'm going to recommend you turn on that's going to take the build to the next level. So if you hit escape and you go into your settings, and then you click on Control Keyboard and Mouse, and then you go down to here, you'll see Pistol Fire Mode. By default, this is set to single click, but we're going to swap it to hold. Now, anytime you fire the pistol, you're just going to hold the button down and it's going to fire off at the max speed, optimizing your damage output. There's also some other great features that they added in the settings. in the last patch, so make sure that you go through, turn on the ones you like. As an example, they added an auto flashlight, which will turn on or off if you're in a dark area, which I'm loving, but there's probably a few others that you like. Just look for the little yellow icon up at the top, and that'll show you a setting that you've never seen before. So just a note, if you are playing on the other server types with the phase and coherence anomalies, you are going to need to modify your cradle slightly different to handle those super anomalies. You're going to want to take a countermeasure for the pistol that'll handle your coherence mobs, and then I'm also going to recommend that you use the SN700 sniper rifle, which is also an unstable bomber build, as your secondary, so that you can get all the same damage bonuses, along with the sniper rifle Cradle Override for the phase anomaly. So this will let you swap between the two weapons and take out each of the super anomalies on those servers. Also, since your Wisp machine is going to be different, you're going to want to buy the Jaws in the Shaman Vulture set for 8k each instead of trying to gamble for them. Next, if you're a new player under level 10, if you have an alt that's under level 10, or if you're swapping to your next server for Season 2 and you're still under level 10, they add it back to the Gather Friends event. So if you hit F2, and then you go to Events up at the top, and then you click Event here, and then you go to Gather Friends. Once you're here, you'll hit X to redeem a code. And you'll want to enter my code, which is YQ150099383, and then click redeem. You will get this Jaws 2-star blueprint for free, and then you'll be able to start with that and craft it right away and start getting this build going. So that's the build. I hope you all have a ton of fun with it like I am. Let me know in the comments if there's some other variation you recommend. If you like this video, please toss me a like. And I'll be working on more builds for these two server types, so be sure to subscribe so you can see when I upload those. We also have a Discord community that you can join where I keep all the spreadsheets and supporting files for all my videos. The link is in the description below if you want to join. I will have a meta spreadsheet in there that you can find this build as well as some others, which I'll try to keep updating. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.